It's too hot to do this, but we're doing it anyway. I will work out climate controls for this room, and when I do, it's over for you guys. As soon as I start recording, helicopters like to go over my house. Are you done? Every single time. I'll start and they're just immediately just like, helicopter. Can never get anything done, I swear. Hello friends, I hope that you are well. This time on Charlemagne Has Something Else to Do, so she's incorporating it into her work again. I've got some plans coming up in the near future, which means that I'm probably going to have to be reading away from home. And that means I'm going to be using my travel setup for all of my tarot equipment that I can use for when I am not in the comfort of my own home. So I figured that I could take you through what I bring with me, as well as what I leave at home when I am reading while I am traveling. I also figured that I could give a little bit of advice based on how I work out what to bring with me and what not to. So let's get started, shall we? So the first thing that I wanted to mention is that you should probably keep things to a minimum when you're traveling with your cards. I know most of us are rocking quite the arsenal of spiritual items in our homes. Witches are well known for being hoarders of trinkets. But you also want to be able to have space in your luggage for things that you actually need to live. Technically, you don't need to bring anything with you other than your tarot cards and yourself. But if you're the type of person that's used to using supports in your everyday practice, it can be difficult to get into the zone when you're not using them. If you're like me, you like to travel quite light. So I try to keep the kit that I have with me to a minimum if I need to bring work things with me when I'm traveling. I will point out that I don't generally bring work things with me when I'm traveling for leisure, and usually the only reason I do is because I've promised that I will give somebody a reading if I'm going to visit them. But on the whole, I don't recommend taking work things with you while you're on holiday. Holidays are for fun, and you should keep them that way. And I would say that for most of us, having a little break from our tarot practices in order to travel is a good thing. It gives us the time to pause, reflect, and relax. But as this is my job, sometimes I have to make a couple of exceptions. So if you happen to be traveling and you want to bring your things with you, the main thing that I consider is that if you have to be carrying your things manually, you'll want to take this into consideration before you pack. Because 4 different decks is going to be a lot of weight on your shoulders if you're having to walk around with all of your things all day. Even more so if you're having to carry around your clothes, toiletries, electronics, chargers, yada yada yada. It is also important to consider where you're going and what you'll have access to when you get there. If you're only traveling around the corner to see a friend, then you can probably bring most of your setup with you. But if you're traveling halfway around the world for a holiday, you might have less ability to not only bring things with you, but also less access to the items that you might need when you get there. You might not even have a table. You might want to consider excluding things like cleansing items like incense that might be hard to clean up after use. Anything that burns, like a candle, as they might pose a safety risk in a closed environment. Items that are difficult to store and transport, like spiky or sharp crystals, crystal wands or candles, or anything that might set off a metal detector or an x-ray machine at an airport. I have literally been stopped in an airport for wearing a wire bra before, so this one is very real. Just be practical and reasonable about what you're taking with you and consider what processes you might have to go through or what restrictions might occur where you're going. Now, if you aren't able to take your normal stuff with you where you're going, how do you even prep to read? Well, I have a couple of ideas, pieces of advice that I can give for adapting your practice. First things is creating a calm space or environment. I generally have my noise cancelling headphones with me when I leave the house because the sensory issues are real, but it's important to be able to find somewhere quiet and calm so you're able to quiet yourself inside too and to hear what the cards have to say better. Don't make things harder for yourself than they have to be. The next thing is learning how to cleanse your deck without any equipment. Now, this can be done in several ways, but learning how to cleanse your deck using yourself alone is a very important skill to learn in your general spiritual practice. The ability to be able to manipulate your own energy field and the energy fields of objects can help you develop a better sense for the spiritual nature of things as well as your inner world. The way that most people use to cleanse their decks is using a white light visualization, which goes a bit like this. Settle down with your deck and take a couple of deep cleansing breaths to reset yourself a little bit. You can either hold the deck or have the deck on a surface out in front of you. When you feel settled within yourself, you can draw attention to the deck. The physical weight of the deck, the energy around the deck. Acknowledge what it feels like. Note if you feel any patches or areas that are different somehow, lighter or heavier in some way. Maybe lighter or darker if you're visually inclined. Once you've gotten acquainted with this energy, you can begin to visualize a ball or halo of light in the center of the deck. This will act as the purifying agent for any stagnant or lingering energy on the deck itself. Anything that might interfere with your reading. Visualize the light growing from the center of the deck outwards, pushing away any lingering energy from the deck. Do this until the ball or the halo is surrounding the whole deck, and then some space around it to disconnect those old ties from the object. You can then visualize the ball or the halo shrinking back into the deck until it shrinks into nothing, and your deck should now be ready to use. I personally use a technique that's adjacent to this, but is also adjacent to a Qigong practice that I already do, because that's how I was taught to manipulate energy in my own body, and therefore I find that the most effective method. It's very similar to the white light visualization, but instead I use my hands to scan for patches of stagnant energy, and then visualize sucking up the energy into my hands and throwing the lingering energy away. The movement is really similar to the act of centering the qi in Qigong. Both techniques take a little bit of getting used to if you've not done them before, or if you're not used to doing any form of energy manipulation in your day-to-day, and it can be quite draining for some people. I know that it definitely is for me when I'm not in a familiar or comfortable place. When you're actually doing your reading, as in actively pulling cards, I do recommend bringing some kind of cloth with you to use as your reading surface. This might be because you're reading cards outside, or it might be that you're reading on surfaces that a lot of people use. But I say this because it is way easier to clean off a cloth if it gets dirty than it is to clean off tarot cards if they get dirty. So now that we've talked about that, let me introduce you to my current travel setup. This is the one that I generally use, though it can change depending on how far I'm traveling. If I'm only going a short distance, I might bring some other stuff with me. If not, then I might bring even less. First things first, I'll bring my main tarot deck that I use. In this case, it's my standard Rider-Waite deck. But if I'm reading for somebody in particular, I might take the deck of their choice and just use it for everything. Next is a cloth to read on. This one's just a scarf I got from Vinted. I think it's originally from Lush, but I rotate these out mostly depending on the outfits that I'm traveling with. My laptop. I generally bring my laptop with me because this is the place where I take all of my notes and do all of my work. But if I'm really avoiding doing work, I might bring my iPad instead, but I digress. Next is my prayer beads. I tend to use these for my meditations in the evening, but I also use them to prep my mind for readings too. If I'm working away from home, this is a good way of keeping my focus. And lastly, my phone, which you can't see here because I'm filming on it. Say hello to yourselves. This is to take pictures when I'm reading for clients, but it's also to keep a record for myself of what I'm reading for other people and what I'm saying to people when I read for them. I also have a personal record for myself for my personal readings. This is my super minimalist setup, so when I know that I can bring more, I generally bring a secondary oracle deck and sometimes a crystal or an incense cone with a really tiny incense holder, so I don't exhaust myself when I have to cleanse my deck at the end of a reading. The last piece of advice I'll leave you with is that when you return to your home base, wherever that currently is for you, this is where you can reset and return to your normal routines. And this is when you can make sure that everything is back in order. I generally do this by cleansing everything I've traveled with in incense smoke, bar my laptop. The fan would really not like that. And I'll place all of my tools on the altar for a few days. I then also give an offering to my ancestors to bless those items, and light some candles if I feel like I need to be thorough with that cleansing. The added fire element makes the process go a little bit faster. You can also do this with yourself by taking a ritual bath or shower, cleansing yourself with smoke, sound, or a crystal if you want to. Reacquaint yourself with the space and allow yourself to shed some of the things that you might have brought back with you, stress from the journey, potential negative experiences. You can then also incorporate some of the positive aspects that you gained from your time away. A good reading or positive interactions with people on your journey, taking in all of the lessons and the new understanding into your life. Remember that while we can't bring our whole practice with us while we travel, we can bring the essentials, which is ourselves and our willingness to gain greater understanding through tarot and spiritual practice. I hope this video could help you in knowing what to bring with you if you're reading tarot away from home, and let me know what you generally bring with you if you're reading away from your house. It's always interesting to know how other people do their practice. I will see you all again for another video at some other time, but until then, stay blessed, my friend. I'm now getting out of this room because it is too hot in here. My God.